Hurricane, and now the Spitfire becomes a maid-of-all work. The latest pictures of the world's finest fighter shows her adapted for close support shallow dive bombing. In its new form, carrying one 250-pound bomb and 4 cannons, the Spitfire becomes an additional threat to Axis transport, supply dumps and shipping. As yet, a South African wing composed entirely of South African pilots is the only one using these new Spitfire bombers. They have been carrying out great work both on the 8th Army Front and across the Adriatic Sea into Yugoslavia. The 25th anniversary of the RAF marked the first occasion that units of the Royal Air Force mounted guard at Buckingham Palace. The anniversary also dated the occasion of His Majesty's first entry into the service on April the 1st, 1918. In the 25 intervening years, the King was able to see the youngest arm of Britain's fighting forces slowly develop into the mightiest striking force the world has ever seen. The Royal Air Force is the King's own service. And so in the first edition of the Gen, we of the service would like to record our thanks for his unfailing interest in us. We deeply appreciate the visits of His Majesty to our stations. We hope that the warmth of our welcomes in the past will encourage him to visit us ever more frequently in the future. This old French hotel keeper, for being imprisoned in Algiers by the Vichy government for his pro-British views. A veteran of the last war, he has handed over his mountain hotel for the use of aircrew on 48-hour rest leave from duty. You see him showing an Austrian gun captured by him in 1917 to some of the boys who are taking advantage of his hospitality. Vive la France! Madame Pavlichenko, recent visitor to an RAF fighter station. This lady accounted for over 300 Germans while sniping for the Red Army. In her message to you, she says, "I wish you work and more work. So if any of you want a quiet life, here's your chance." Do you remember him? Yes, it's Max Schmeling. Last time you saw him in the news, he was being battered to pulp by Joe Louis in one of the shortest fights in history. Once again, he is on the losing side, training as a parachutist for his new manager, Adolf Hitler, the man who has tried to mismanage the world in his own brutal way. These pictures come from a captured German newsreel and were calculated to increase the popularity of this service by showing the German boxing champion going through his paces. Schmeling was reported killed in the battle for Crete, but it is known that he survived to prolong the agony. And so once more he is in the losing corner of the ring. When he fought Joe Louis, there was a slim chance of victory. Against democracy, none. The pose for this match represents in its simplest form decency, and as such is beyond the grasp of men like these. Now, Schmeling, if he has not already fallen a victim, waits for the world's chief fight promoter to throw in the towel. Maybe it'll be thrown out again. fellows overseas who read much about the terrific pre-invasion bombing of Germany and occupied territory, these pictures will be interesting. In recent months, marauders have played a conspicuous part in the great air offensive across the Channel by day. An air offensive primarily concentrated on railway yards at junctions on the main lines, airfields, ammunition dumps, equipment stores and repair works. The obvious aim has been to paralyze first the communications on which the German army in France depends for reinforcements and the switching of reserves, and secondly to ensure against enemy air interference with our own operations. Air Marshal Harris, Chief of Bomber Command, who has been responsible for providing Germany with the greatest headache she has ever suffered. The Air Marshal had an unshakable faith in the power of the heavy bomber to destruct the enemy's vitals. That faith is now being justified. Dr. Evett, Australian Minister for External Affairs. It was Dr. Evett who persuaded Mr. Churchill to send Spitfires to Australia when that country was in peril from the Japanese invasion. To Australian pilots in Britain, Dr. Evett said, "You in Britain are fighting for the homeland of Australia, just as in Australia, British pilots are fighting for Britain." Air Marshal Sir John Linnell, Deputy CNC Middle East. Not since the pageantry of the Middle Ages has a King of Britain knighted one of his victorious soldiers kneeling on the field of battle. Admiral Mountbatten, now Supreme Commander-in-Chief, Southern Asia. In charge of destroyers in the early part of the war, when he took part in many heroic actions, Lord Louis soon rose to become Chief of Combined Operations. His new appointment will ensure Britain's full part in the pending offensive actions in the Pacific.
You remember you asked me to send some pictures of the Boomerang. I hope they're okay. This little bus has really done good work and made a grand name for itself in the fighting over in New Guinea. Perhaps the most interesting point about her is that she was designed and built here in Australia. All Australian, in fact. This one is being put through its paces by one of our crack pilots, and as you can see, she handles well.
Mediterranean Air Transport and Ferry School. This is the place where ferry pilots are trained for the work of the Mediterranean Group of Transport Command. They are the men behind the war, and while some come from flying training schools, others are experienced operational pilots. They all, however, have to serve their apprenticeship both in the air and on the ground, and at the end of their course are able to fly practically every known aircraft of any category. Harvard trainers are used for the preliminary work. The future ferry pilots are trained by some of the most experienced instructors in the world, whose combined flying hours total 25,000. Last year alone, ferry pilots of this transport group delivered 8,000 aircraft all over the globe, sometimes in convoys, sometimes singly. When a pilot has finished his course, the instructor always has a last tip to give. The destination of the aircraft may be anywhere, through every type of climate. In the air above this landing ground, there are many strange sights. For instance, how many times have you seen a kitty hawk, a hurricane, and a Spitfire in formation? Or a Blenheim, a Beaufort, a Beaufighter, a Baltimore, and a Marauder together? The work of the ferry school is hard and exacting, but the results have shown no small contribution to the victory one day to be shared by us all. Wood, since time immemorial, has been one of the most valuable weapons of war. It is not so very long ago since the mightiest fleets of the world were built from wood, just sea-going trees, in fact. But if somebody told you that these fallen giants would soon be winging their way across the channel to blast Germany's war machine, you would probably think he was a little gone in the head. Nevertheless, just as in the past Britain put wood to sea, so today she puts it in the air. In Canadian factories, as in Britain, the transformation takes place. Wood is being shaped and given wings to fly. Slowly but surely, trees are turning into aeroplanes. Aeroplanes made entirely of wood that have, in all-round performance, beaten anything yet built. Perhaps you've guessed their identification. They started as night fighters, but have done practically every type of work. Terrific speed made them ideal for photo reconnaissance. Terrific power allowed them to carry loads equal to bombers twice their size. I expect you've all guessed what they are by now. But for those still in doubt, Mosquito's the name. Just flying trees. It's a fact.